Episode 4, let's do it. It's Dan Mathews. He is the animal. It's Dan Mathews and the Animals, episode 4. He's Matt Maltepis. I, of course, am Dan Mathews. You're watching us on YouTube. No, I am not Arnie Palmer alert. Huge fan of the movie The Other Guys. It was a joke with buddies of mine once, and I said, with us using StreamYard for the show, I said, what the hell? It stays. So Arnold Palmers are delicious. John Daly's are delicious as well. If you're getting a little froggy on a Saturday afternoon, you want to throw a little bit of Tito's vodka or something like that in there. No free plugs, no free shout outs, but it is a delicious way to spend a Saturday watching some college football. But Matt, we teased it a little bit at the beginning because the games we're going to get into today, number 13, Notre Dame at NC State, as well as number 22, Texas A&M at Miami, and then the one that everybody is going to have their eyes on this weekend. That is number 11, Texas on the road in Tuscaloosa, taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide. We will break all of them down right here in this episode. But I want to start off first because there's a little rule in the radio industry. You tease something, don't keep the audience waiting. So, you threw something out about this Notre Dame matchup when we concluded episode 3. So let's start right there. The Irish are in Raleigh taking on NC State this week after NC State went on the road and took on UConn and beat them. The Irish 2-0 so far this season, beating Tennessee State last week and going over across the Atlantic and taking on Navy in Ireland and winning that one handedly as well. You like a particular play in this one, so let's start right there.
So yeah, I teased something last week. If you didn't watch the episode, go ahead and watch it. But we're going to start off with Notre Dame at NC State. Open Notre Dame -8. It's gone down to 7.5. The total open 50 is now up to 51. And you might be able to catch a 51.5 depending on a couple shops. Notre Dame started out putting up 42 on Navy and 56 on Tennessee State. Offense started off strong. They have shown to be a high-power offense thus far. NC State put up 24 against UConn, but could have put up more. If you look at that game, they actually missed a 4th and 1 that could have resulted in at least 3 points, if not 7. And they also missed a field goal. So we're looking at least at 30 points that they should have probably put up on UConn. NC State let up 14 to UConn, but I mean, Notre Dame's offense is a whole different story, right? UConn ranked 114 last year in yards per play. Notre Dame ranked 44th in yards per play last year in the nation. Within 2 games so far this year, they ranked 7th in yards per play with an average score of 49 points per game. This year on offense for NC State, we have a new quarterback at the helm, Brendan Armstrong. I think he's going to boast the offense to some new heights compared to before with his ability to move on the ground and extend plays. And that's exactly why I bet the over 51 here, as I teased in the last show. Always check for teasers at the end of the show or in the middle of shows. You never know when I'm going to give you something special and some gold.
Easter eggs, folks. That's what we give you. We give you Easter eggs here. We
Sprinkle
throw them in there. So, absolutely. Hey, you know what? We always love Easter eggs. As kids, we love them. And especially, too, if it helps us make a little bit of money. One thing before, we move on here is I'm looking at this, and in my notes, I put NC State getting plus 250 on the money line. That is the board telling you we do not think they are going to win. If they do, it's a significant upset. Am I looking at that wrong?
No, I didn't touch the side because, I mean, there's some uncertainty. Like, it's still early in the season. I like to, especially with sides, I let them marinate these teams and see who they really are, right? It's like we saw Texas the first game compared to Alabama. We'll get to the game later, but they didn't cover that first game. And they missed that number by about 8 points, whereas Alabama covered. And now we have, I'll get to the game later, but I'm a little teasing it a little bit too early. But I like to let the sides marinate a little bit. I like to focus on totals early on.
Very well. So over the 51, he threw that out in the last episode. We covered it again here. Again, some other notes on this game. I mean, the Irish is 7.5-point road favorite for this game. We gave you the over. We gave you the side. So that is number 13, Notre Dame at NC State. A little bit later on the day, we're going to get number 22, Texas A&M at Miami. The Aggies are a 4-point road favorite. Now, here's the interesting one. I know what you just said about sides, but I kind of look in the window on sides of if I'm getting that 150 to about 170, then that kind of tempts me a little bit. And in this one right here, the side for Miami, the money line for them is plus 157. I kind of feel like that maybe the board is tempting me a little bit there. Am I maybe looking at that wrong? I mean, because this is an A&M team that last week put up 52 points. Now, I know some people are going to say, come on, Dan, it was New Mexico. But still, this was an offense last year that really struggled to get their footing for much of the season. And with Anaya Smith back out there, it really looks like he is a huge part of what they want to do offensively. Evan Stewart, another really good player for Miami in this one. I almost wonder for the Canes, is this too much to handle too early on in the season?
Well, this game opened Texas A&M -5. It currently sits at 4.5. Total open 49, then shut up to 52, where we saw some sharp action come in and take the under. They bet the under to the key number of 51. A couple of shots leaning towards 50.5, depending on, like I said, where you shop. Both of these defenses came out strong in the first game. A&M held New Mexico to 10 points, while the Hurricanes held Miami of Ohio to 3 points. And we all know those teams aren't the best ranked teams last year in points per game, but nonetheless, still a good sign early on, right? Both teams ranked top 20 in opponent yards per play. Metric last year, Tyler Van Dyke started off the game well, 20-25, but he went up against the 95th ranked team last year in opponent yards per play in Miami, Ohio. This time he's going up against the 11th best ranked defense in opponent yards per play metric. So we saw these teams match up last year. They put up a combined 26 points, and that's about half of what this total is currently. They did have 2 missed field goals in that game last year, but they also did get an easy score with a fumble recovery that lets in easy scores. So it kind of all evens out. A&M is going to have, I think, enough on that defensive front to mitigate some of the rushing attack for the Miami, Florida team. It's also the best safety duo that A&M will have to deal with all year, in my opinion. So on top of all that, you look at the factors of the weather. It's looking like we're going to have 10-mile-per-hour winds and rain. And it kind of led me to bet the under in this one. I went under 51.5.
So we go over in the Notre Dame-NC State game. We go under here for all the reasons that you just mentioned right there. I mean, yes, this is going to be a game that for both teams, it is a challenge early on in the season. I'm with you on A&M too. I just feel like they are further ahead as a program. Now, the quarterback, matchup here, Connor Weigman, very good option for A&M. Tyler Van Dyke too, a guy that at times last year showed some really good things. The year before was when he had a real breakout season, but this is a game too. I mean, my good buddy Jake Crane of Crane and Company that does a show covering college football brought up a point that this is a program defining game for both programs because A&M loses this one, then a lot of people start coming for Jimbo Fisher. If Mario Cristobal loses this one, then I think a lot of people look at Mario Cristobal and say, dude, when is this ever going to get going? Like, you need to win games like this for us to believe in you. It's so much to the point right now where they play there in Miami Gardens, halfway in between Miami and halfway in between Fort Lauderdale, that they are trying to entice people with future games this year. I think Florida State was one. I forget another one that they tried to say, hey, buy tickets to this one. We give you those. Most programs, when you have a big time game coming into town, they try to mitigate the single game buys where they say, okay, fine, you can have the game against Georgia, but you got to buy the games against NC State, North Carolina, and other teams as well if you're going to buy tickets to that game. So Miami going a little bit the opposite direction there. So we'll see if indeed Mario Cristobal can help bring the U back. Man, we're moving along in this episode, so that gives us plenty of time to be able to talk the game that I know that everybody is going to have their eyes on this week, Matt, and that is Texas at Alabama. The Crimson Tide, a 7-point favorite in this one. Texas plus 240 on the money line. The over-under for this one is 54 and a hook for this game. Jalen Milroe looked really good in his debut last week. Now, again, it's buyer beware, Middle Tennessee State. I get it. But then conversely, Texas against Rice. Now, I think some people could say, well, that's just Steve Sarkisian not showing a lot. Okay, fine. Whatever you want to say. At the same time, though, I saw some downfield throws from Quinn Ewers that were inaccurate, overthrows, that just that part of the offense was not there for Texas. Scheme or not, I kind of feel like that kind of shows you who you are, not necessarily the plays that are being called.
Yeah, so I was talking about this game earlier. Now it's time to actually get into it. Alabama opened -7.5, currently sits at a key number of 7. Total opened 56.5 and actually got pushed down to 54, where it's sitting now 54.5. Alabama, we all saw them open the door, ripping Middle Tennessee to shreds, as expected, right? They covered the 39.5 spread last week, whereas Texas, I want to say struggled because they did win 37-10, but Texas didn't play up to expectation, right? Texas took on Rice last week and they were laying 35.5 on the spread, and they failed to cover that number by more than one score. So Texas had a couple of turnover on downs and a missed field goal, and that played a little, played a little of their mark towards not covering. I don't think Alabama's offense, I've talked about this before, made videos. I don't think Alabama's offense will be as good this year. Bo Bryant's gone, Bryce Young gone, Milrose the QB. And sure, he might have played well against Middle Tennessee, but I'm not sold on the guy. He's not my favorite guy. All right. So they don't have a true lead wide receiver, in my opinion, either. They only have one projected first round pick, which is on the O-line on offense. I think they have they lack some explosiveness a little bit. Alabama team is still great. Don't get me wrong. Okay. It's Alabama. It's Nick Saban. It's the standard. And it's one of the top teams. It's just not up to par with, in my opinion, those championship Alabama teams, right? This is a test for me for Texas. This Texas team, I think this is it, right? This is Nick Saban. It's Alabama, the standard. This, a standard of what you should be year in and year out. But to me, the question mark is Ewers, right? So Ewers, like you said, he didn't look the sharpest last week. What was he? 22 of 36. Like it wasn't the sharpest game for him. And now he's versing the best of the best, right? And that's my question mark for him. When he goes up against these top defenses, can he perform? Is he going to rise up to the occasion? I'm kind of scared. I know my partner is big on Texas in this game. So, I have the most respect for him and his process. But I don't know. It's a tougher game for me. And I haven't bet anything on this game yet because I'm trying to still make a whole bunch of phone calls. I'm trying to see what's going on. I'm trying to let this game marinate and see what we can do. I'm going to be talking to the Godfather. I just actually interviewed him on the Mal Teppish Report. It's a great podcast. Check it out if you haven't. But yeah, I'm going to be talking to him. I'm going to be talking about 8-Ball, Jimmy, Sheep, Jamie Gold, a whole bunch of different people. And I'm going to see what everyone thinks and really let this game marinate a little bit before I attack it.
Yeah, I mean, for this one too, I think there's a lot of different things. Coming into this game throughout the offseason, I said, oh, this is setting up for Texas. But every time I feel like, Matt, I do that to Nick Saban, that's when Alabama just absolutely comes out and you say, oh, wait, you're still Alabama. That's 7-point line right there. I mean, myself, if I could speak properly, I took Texas +7 in this one. But, I mean, this just looks like a game that, it sets up where Alabama, it's the revenge tour. We hear that all the time with Alabama teams, especially when by their standards, they have a down season, which by their standards, they did last year. They weren't in the college football playoff. That's a down season. Even more of a down season, they don't win the national title. I mean, Nick Saban's told the stories numerous times of people coming up to him and saying, well, maybe we can win a little bit more next year. It's like, well, we won an SEC championship. I think that's pretty good. But, I mean, this is a team that I remember I talked with J.C. Latham, who you mentioned at SEC Media Days, and he brought up that this is joyless murder ball. We are going for the Joe Moore Award. There is not a lack of motivation in that Alabama locker room, and they're going to be there. Tuscaloosa, it's going to be under the lights. You're going to have Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit on this game. Game day is going to be there. It's going to have all of the atmosphere that we've seen there on the capstone numerous times in the past. And I really feel like this is going to be a very prepared Alabama team. For Texas, though, I mean, it was something that we brought up locally here on our show in Houston yesterday, and that was if Texas wins this game, you're going to have the calls of the dreaded words, the 3. Texas is back. And the problem that I have with that is that it hasn't necessarily been winning games like this. It's been for the Longhorns being able to finish the drill, finish the job, and go on the road and beat TCU, go on the road and beat, I don't know, Kansas or Oklahoma State or somebody like that. Without looking at their schedule, I'm just throwing those out as examples. That's been the Texas problem in the past. So, you've also got another thing as well. Nick Saban in the past, you could kind of throw this out the window, but you got to mention it. Was it 24-2 all time against former assistants? Steve Sarkisian fits that bill. The only two assistants that have been able to solve that puzzle have been Jimbo Fisher a couple of years ago at Texas A&M, and then, of course, the national championship game to end the 2021 season when Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs had a strong second half. You still remember that game, too, where after they shook hands to finish the game, you heard clear as day Nick Saban say, wow, you guys just kicked our ass in the second half. And that is something that Alabama is trying to get back to doing. So, I made the pick of Texas +7. I am now starting to look at it and say, do I need to try to find a hedge somewhere in there? So follow you guys on the College Kids, follow Philly Godfather, 8-Ball. Just everybody that you can follow as part of the group of the Animals. If you do that, I'm telling you right now, you will be watching college football Saturdays a lot more comfortably, saying, yeah, I like what I threw in there. So these guys are definitely worth your time and worth your money. There's no doubt about it. I'm Dan Mathews. I'm not Arnie Palmer alert. He is Matt Maltepis. He is the Animals. Just really quick here, Matt. Let's run through it. I took Texas +7 in this one. We're going to go with the rainy conditions there in South Florida, under 51 in the A&M and Miami game, and then also to the over 51 in the Notre Dame-NC State game. Two really good quarterbacks. You talked about Brennan Armstrong. I know it's Sam Hartman's already been able to show so far early on for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and also, too, it's a tough road test for them. It's the first one that they've had all season. You can say, well, hey, they went across the Atlantic and played in Ireland, but no, this is the first true road game because they've really played 2 home games so far this year. That was a pro Notre Dame crowd there in Dublin. And then, of course, last week there at Notre Dame Stadium, taking on Eddie George's Tennessee State program. So now Dave Doran, a guy that has been able to win some huge games there in the ACC. It is going to be the first true test for them because it sets up in a couple of weeks for Ohio State there in South Bend taking on Notre Dame. So that'll be a fun weekend for sure. So we got your plays for you here in this episode. Good luck to all of you this weekend. I'm Dan Mathews. You got something?
I got a little sneak peek or a little special move for you guys. We're going with the Georgia under 53. Lock it in. Let's get another winner.
All right, I like it. Under 53, that was a Georgia team that had to really scramble last week and be able to put up some points in that Tennessee Martin game. And, it's a new offensive coordinator, even though he's been in the program, Mike Bobo, new quarterback in Carson Beck as well. Another thing, too, that could feed into that, Ladd McConkey, one of their top targets in the receiving game, a little banged up with a back issue there in Athens. So, it can't all be Brock Bowers for that offense. So it is a game which, mind you, too, to remind people of this was originally supposed to be a huge game this weekend. This was supposed to be Georgia at Oklahoma. But, of course, with the Sooners moving to the SEC, Greg Sankey told both programs, reschedule it. We'll get you down the road in conference. So I know a lot of people are dogging Georgia, too, for that very reason and saying, hey, where's the schedule this year, guys? It's like, well, they did have a top-tier game at the beginning of the season, so the benefit of the doubt needs to go there. So I like it. Again, another Easter egg being thrown in there. We are about Easter eggs on this show. Again, I'm Dan Mathews. He's Matt Maltepis. I am Dan Mathews, and he is part of the Animals. Episode 4 is in the books. Like I said, good luck to everybody this weekend. And episode 5 coming your way on Tuesday. Let's see how we did.
Coming for everything.